Good morning. So this morning, actually last night, but this morning especially, I've been thinking about this concept that a coach of mine shared with me at one point. And so I had this coach share this concept with me several years ago, and it helped then, and then recently I've been reminded of it. And it's this concept that emotion follows motion. So basically, emotions are simply biochemical reactions to thoughts. So when you have a thought, it triggers a biological, chemical, physical reaction in your body. And a lot of times it's energy, there's an energy to it. But what we get to learn and understand is, especially those of us who maybe struggle with feeling stuck in emotions. I know that I used to get really stuck in my emotions and have a really hard time getting shifting, or I felt like my emotions controlled me. And even now, there'll be days where I'm I struggle to get out of emotional loops that I can get into. And that's something that I'm always learning. I'm always a student myself, and I'm always trying to, pursuing growth and healing myself. And so that's something that really has stood out to me, is this concept of emotion following motion. That's really helpful for those of us who have this tendency to get stuck in our emotions. So basically, the way this works is, we've already established emotions are a biophysical, chemical reaction to the thoughts we have. And so if we're finding ourselves getting stuck in emotions, there's several things we can do, all right? And the number one thing to do that we can really, will really help long run, is to really address the thoughts that are creating those emotions. And so this is where coaching comes in. This is where mentoring comes in. This is where therapy can help. When we identify and work through the thoughts that are then triggering those emotions, that'll help us experience those emotions less. But we're still going to experience emotions. And those of us who have a tendency towards, again, getting stuck in emotions, that's going to happen. On our journey, that's still going to happen. It happens to me less than it used to, but it still occasionally happens. I had that happen to me several times this week, honestly, where I kind of got stuck and had to shift and figure out how to shift. And so there's the coaching and the therapy element of talking through the thoughts, identifying, processing, doing those things, working with those beliefs, digging into any traumas that developed those beliefs and created those beliefs and wired your brain to be a certain way that isn't serving you right now. But then the other thing that is really powerful is to shift our state. And as a believer, I have a beef with how the church has handled this, or at least how it was handled in my experience growing up. See, I grew up with my mom. One of my mom's favorite sayings was "fake it till you make it." And I have a massive beef with that particular way of wording it, because it's okay, so I fake, you have to fake it, right? Fake it till you make it. The problem that happens there is, if all you're doing is faking it, you don't actually ever make it. You just suppress the emotions. You don't actually deal with them. So just using a fake it till you make it approach does not work. However, there's an element of that concept that can support combined with the process of getting coaching or talk therapy or support with your thoughts and beliefs. And what that is this: emotion follows motion. So if you're feeling stuck in an emotion that you do not want to be stuck in, you shift your state. You move your body. Now, this doesn't mean you have to go do some intense workout, although you could, that does help. But it could be as simple as changing your clothes. It could be as simple as getting in the car and going for a drive. It could be as simple as taking a 5-minute walk around the block. It could be as simple as eating something, getting up and going and eating something. It could be as simple as putting on a song and dancing intuitively to it, like just letting your body move. It could look like stretching. It could look like a lot of things. One of my favorite things for years has been, and we've moved, so I'm still finding my place to be able to do this with. But when I lived in California, there was this kind of like little barn, like that had like animals you could feed and like fun little snacks, and it was just this lovely outdoor area, and that was like about an hour away from where I lived. And when I had a day, probably once a month or once every couple months, I would have a day where I just was like in a total like funk, right? You know those days when you're just in a funk? Well, anytime I had a day like that, I would load up the kids in the car and I would go, and I'd go through like a Starbucks drive-thru or something and get myself a coffee. I would drive up to, it was called Avila Barn, in San Luis Obispo, California. I would drive up to Avila Barn and unload the kids, and we would go and we'd walk around, and I'd go and I'd buy, lettuce for them to feed the animals, and we would have a picnic lunch, and that I usually would pack before I left. And then maybe I would get them an ice cream or some sort of little snacky treat from the sweet shop, and we would just walk around and enjoy the fresh air and sunshine and feed some animals, and then we would go home. And sometimes I might stop at the store on the way home and stuff too, but it was something that like I removed myself from my normal environment. So like I stayed home a lot when I lived in California because stay-at-home mom, homeschooling, I did all these, I was home a lot. And so that was my normal environment. But whenever I was just having this stuck energy of like feeling stuck and not sure, like just kind of, just off, I would remove myself from that environment, and I would take the kids with me because that usually helped them too. And also like I couldn't just leave them at home. And I would take them with me, and we would go and we would shift our state. We would physically move. And it helped so much. And, we've moved, and I'm still looking for my thing to do now here in Nashville that's similar. It doesn't have to be identical, but it's similar. So if anybody lives in Nashville and knows of like something that has the similar vibe, please let me know because I'm on the hunt. But all that to say, it shifted. It caused the state to shift. And so it could be something as like significant of a shift as like leaving your house and going and being gone for like 2 or 3 hours. But it could also be something as simple as going outside barefoot and standing in some grass and letting your bare feet touch dirt and grass. It could be something as simple as stretching or yawning or jumping up and down for a minute. But what it does is when we do some sort of motion, when we're stuck in our emotions and we move our body in some way and we have some motion in our body, emotions are energy. And so when we move our body, it helps that energy to flow through our body and get expressed the way it needs to get expressed. And then we're able, it kind of just clears the head. It clears that stagnant energy that can happen when we get stuck in our emotions. And so we move, and it creates that clarity, and it creates just this shift, and it's like this refresh. And then that actually often can put us into a state to be able to more effectively then dig into, with a fresh perspective, okay, what was I thinking that created that emotion? And then dig into the thoughts Now, sometimes we do need to just, if we're really, really like deep in it emotionally, diving straight into the thought work and diving straight into the like getting some coaching can super duper help. But if you're finding that like you're stuck in this state and you've been getting like some coaching, you've been getting some therapy or whatever, and it doesn't seem to be helping, you kind of just seem stuck in this cycle of stuck emotions, doing this shift of moving your body and getting that motion going before you then dive in to the thought work and the therapy or whatever it is you're doing, that really can make a huge difference and shift in that breakthrough. And so that's something that I'll encourage my clients with, is like, if I'm finding that they're getting stuck in an emotion, we validate the emotion, right? We're not trying to suppress or judge or push or stuff the emotion. We validate it. But if we keep just getting stuck there, we find a strategy to help us flow and process it so that we then can get some forward movement. So there's just a little taste of, if this is something that you are dealing with, you find yourself having this tendency to get stuck in your emotions or stuck in loops with your emotions, that's something that I can help you with. And I actually have 5 spots open right now. I have room for 5 clients. So if that's something that you would be interested in, and you heard this and you're like, oh my gosh, like that is so, I need some support there. Send me a DM and we can talk. We can get on a complimentary consultation call, see what's going on, see if it's a good fit, and go from there. But yeah, so 5 spots open. Shoot me a DM if that's something you're interested in. But in the meantime, this can help anybody. So take it. If this is an area that you could use support, take it and run with it. And I'm excited to see how it supports you. All right. Have a great day.